And another example is with sports. In social interactions, I thought that it was fixed, and I thought that my ability was low. In sports, I thought my ability was pretty high. I was toward the high end of my peers, but I still thought it was fixed. So I thought some of my friends looked like naturals in terms of sports. They were so fluid, and some people were kind of clumsy, and it just seemed like this, athleticism was something that was fixed in people. And looking back, after I read the book Mindset, I realized that I had a fixed mindset about sports. And when I came into a field or a court, I was going to play something, again, I would get really nervous. I would be very, very nervous right before the game started. And it was a high-stakes situation. It was about proving how good I was rather than working to improve myself. So I wasn't focused on how do I improve, what can I learn, what can I try differently, and what can I do better next time. I was just going out there to do the best I can to see how good I was. And it wasn't until I learned about mindset that I started realizing I've been self-sabotaging. And I started saying, no, I can get better at this. And I became much better as a soccer player, as an adult, than as a child, because I understood how I was sabotaging myself. So let's take 2 minutes to share with a neighbor where we have a fixed mindset about ourselves, either about ourselves or about other people, either in the present or in the past, and what effect that has had on us. And here are a couple of examples that you might think about if you're having a hard time coming up with an example. And you can think about with this area where you have a fixed mindset, do you see effort as a good thing, as a positive thing, or as a negative thing? Is your goal to look smarter, to learn and grow? And when you encounter challenge, are you resilient or do you feel helpless? And sometimes that's a little hard to expose where we might have fixed mindsets, but hopefully that starts conversations that can help us deepen understanding and then also support one another to develop growth mindsets and to help one another grow. So I'm going to share with you another research study that starts to randomly assign subjects into one condition versus another, so we can start looking at causality, not just correlation. And it also tells us a little bit about how these mindsets are formed and how we can influence them. So in this study, researchers had 5th grade students do a set of puzzles that look like this. They were nonverbal IQ tests. And the students, the kids, the children, were asked to figure out which of these pieces in the bottom went with a piece in the top. And they had a bunch of these puzzles, so they would solve one and go to the next one and go to the next one. And these puzzles were at an appropriate level of difficulty for the students. So they were relatively successful in being able to solve these puzzles. And after they were done with a set of puzzles, they were randomly assigned to hear one of two things. So some students heard, wow, that's a really good score. You must be smart at this. And other students heard, wow, that's a really good score. You must have tried really hard. And the only difference between these two sets of students, was what they heard. You must be smart at this, or you must have tried really hard. Then a bunch of different things happened to all students that I'll describe. But the only difference between these is what they heard. So the next thing that happened after they did the puzzles, they heard one of these two things. The next thing that happened is the adult asked them, okay, we're going to do another set of puzzles. Do you want to do an easy one or a hard one? And they responded differently to that question. How do you think they responded differently? Yeah.
Some wanted to do it, and then some didn't want to do the next test.
So their choices were, I want to do the easy puzzle, or I want to do the hard puzzle. So how do you think that they responded differently, the ones who heard, you must be smart at this, or you must have tried really hard? What do you think?
The ones that would think they would be smart, they would want to do it, and then the people that didn't feel like they were smart, they would not want to do it.
Great. So you're saying that the ones who heard, you must be smart at this, chose to do the hard thing, yeah, because because they were feeling more confident.
Yeah.
So they were feeling more confident because they thought they were smart, and they chose to do the challenging thing. Okay, great. Other hypothesis? Yeah.
I think the one that
Okay, so the one, again, so the same hypothesis. The ones who were told you must be smart at this chose the hard one because they were feeling more confident. And the ones who were told you must have tried really hard chose to do the easy one. Okay? Did you have something? Did you have the same?
I would think that those that were more interested in hearing that they were smart probably were the fixed mindset. And so they would actually want to do the easier questions.
Now, who were the ones that were more interested in hearing that they were smart? They were randomly assigned to hear one of these two things. So whether what they heard was random, but you talked about interest. Tell me more about that.
Well, based on what we learned earlier, if they had a fixed mindset, they were interested in the proctor or the teachers telling them that they are smart.
Okay.
Or they wanted to know that they were doing well.
Yeah.
And so that would indicate that they had a more fixed mindset.
Uh-huh.
The brain was more interested in that portion of what the teacher said.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
The ones that were said to be smart, I think they would use interest since they already know how to do it.
Okay.
And the ones that are a growth mindset, they would try harder to get it right.
Okay. So the ones you think that the ones who heard you must be smart at this chose the easy puzzle, and the ones who heard we must have tried really hard chose the hard one. Okay. Did I see another hand up?
Yeah, I think if you tell them that they're smart, you're kind of implementing the fixed way of thinking, right? And then the other way is you're implementing or you're helping them realize it was a growth factor. So maybe these ones, for the ones that tried hard, wanted to do the harder puzzle.
Okay. So we have a couple of different hypotheses here, right? Which is great because when we don't know the answer, it's an opportunity for learning. If you already knew the answer, then it would be a waste of your time. So thank you for volunteering and taking the risk to say, here's what I think. I'm not sure. So what happens here is that this is what we call the intelligence praise because we are communicating that abilities are fixed, that intelligence or abilities are fixed. And this fosters a fixed mindset in students because they're saying from this message, they get the message of, okay, people are either smart or not, and that's why people succeed. That's a really good score. You must be smart at this. That's saying this person thinks that the reason people succeed is because whether they're smart or not. And at that point in time, they're probably feeling pretty confident. They're probably feeling pretty smart because they just succeeded. They were told they were smart. They're saying, I'm smart, yeah, and I'm feeling high confidence. And then the process praise, while it's a really good score, you must have tried really hard. We call that process praise or effort praise because it focuses on the students' behaviors, the things that are in their control, whether they try hard, the strategies that they use, the decisions or the choices that they make. Rather than whether they're smart or not, which is beyond their control, if smart is a fixed thing. And so process praise of giving people feedback on their behavior or their choices puts people in a growth mindset. But even more so when we talk about abilities being fixed, as people are smart or not, or naturally talented or not, then people learn that abilities are fixed. And so it puts them in a fixed mindset. So the next thing that happened is that, as I said, these two sets of students were asked, do you want to do an easy puzzle or a hard one? And what actually happened is that the students who were told, you must be smart at this, who got into a fixed mindset as a result of that, the majority of them chose to do the easy puzzle. So if they heard, you must be smart at this, they chose to do the easy thing. And if they heard, you must have tried really hard, they chose to, or over 90% of them chose to challenge themselves with a hard set of puzzles. And this has been replicated many, many times. So there's a line of thinking that says, well, if people are either smart or not and I'm smart, then I should do the challenging thing. What are challenging things for if it's not for the smart people? And we praise children for being smart with our best intention to raise their confidence, and it might raise it short term. But what happens is they want to continue looking and feeling smart, and the way to do that is to do things they already know how to do quickly, effortlessly, perfectly, without any effort, and so they don't want to challenge themselves. So we had this difference, And the next thing that happened is the adults said, well, you know what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to do a hard set of puzzles, but it's going to be hard, but we're going to learn from it. And all the students did this hard set of puzzles that was challenging. They struggled with it. And after that second set, they did a third set of puzzles that was of equal difficulty than the first one, because the researchers wanted to see, does hearing one of the two different things affect the performance of the students? And in that, so this graph has the performance in the puzzles, their problem solving or puzzle solving test score here. And then they have the first trial here, which is essentially the same thing. This is just a random small difference. And then the third trial. So we're comparing the first trial to the third trial because those were of equal difficulty. And one thing that we're hearing, and then there's a third group of students that I didn't mention, which is a control group, which just heard, wow, that's a really good score. That's all they heard. And that group did slightly better in the third trial than the second trial, than the first trial, essentially the same thing. But one thing that we're seeing here is that the students who were told you must be smart at this actually did worse in the third trial than they did in the first trial. 10 minutes ago, they did better in their critical thinking and performance assessment and these problem-solving tasks. We know they can do better. We told them they're smart, and now they became less capable problem solvers. Why does that happen? All we did is we told them they must be smart.
Oh, you gave them that hard puzzle in between.
Yeah.
So they were that belief got challenged that they're not as smart as they thought they were. So they're not going to be able to do the next thing.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. So we told them you must be smart. That put them in a fixed mindset because they might have said, okay, I'm smart, but the deeper lesson that they got from that is that people are either smart or not. And when they struggled, when they made mistakes, when they didn't know how to solve something, they were saying, I must not be smart, right? And so they became nervous. They were worried about whether they were smart or not. They were worried about what this person was thinking of them. And that anxiety, fight or flight, got in the way of thinking. And they're coming into that third puzzle saying, I'm not smart. I can't do this. And they're worried about whether they're smart or not. And they have lower confidence. So we told them, you must be smart at this to raise their confidence. But it has the opposite effect. When people experience challenge and struggle, their confidence goes down rather than up if we tell them how talented or smart they are. And the students who were told you must have worked really hard, their scores went up. So why did that happen? Yes, over there.
Maybe they wanted to find out for themselves whether they were smart.
Okay, maybe they wanted to find out whether they're smart or not. You know, thank you for volunteering that. I doubt that they're thinking about whether they're smart or not, because that hasn't been part of the conversation, right? So they haven't heard, you're smart or you're not smart. They just they received some feedback on their behavior, on their effort. So I doubt that they're thinking about whether they're smart or not. What are other ideas? Yeah.
They continue to work hard.
They continue to work hard. And so you think that going into the third trial, they're going to work harder than the students who were told they were smart, and that's one reason. Okay, what else? That I would say that's true. Yes.
Well, maybe they know, since someone noticed they were working hard, they wanted that attention, they should work harder.
So maybe the fact that this person valued effort was also another incentive for them to work hard. So again, going into that third trial, they were going to be working harder at these puzzles. Yes? What other ideas? Yeah. Yeah.
What are puzzles? Because you were saying
Yeah.
the number of puzzles solved, they went from 5 to about 6.
Yeah.
How much of an improvement is that? Really? Are you doing 1,000-piece puzzles and you give the same amount of time? And now
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there were 10. But it was a significant difference. And it's not. This is just one example study, but there's many. But I think there were 10 puzzles, if I'm not mistaken. that they were able to.
Same difficulty level, and when they got to the second time, they're exact same, but not the same levels.
Exactly. Yeah. So another reason why these students who were put in a growth mindset did better is not only because they worked harder, but because they learned how to do puzzles. They learned something useful about problem solving in that second trial when they were struggling. Some students, the ones who were in a fixed mindset, were thinking, am I smart or am I not smart? I'm probably not smart. What is this person thinking of me? And I'm getting very nervous. And that's what their brain was saying. The other students were just working hard, which just means they were looking at the puzzle, they were looking at colors and shapes and trying to solve the puzzles. And they were really hard for them, and they were probably not succeeding. But they were learning something useful about puzzle solving, which is what we want students to do in school, is what we want people to do, to improve whatever they want to do. So in a growth mindset, people become learners. They become interested in improving themselves, and their attention is on those things that is going to help them learn and improve rather than show how good they are. And in this study, after students did that third trial, they were asked to report their scores on a sheet of paper to students in another school that they would never meet again. And the students who had heard they must be smart lied about their scores over 3 times more often than those in the growth mindset condition that heard that they must have tried really hard. They didn't have another strategy to cope with their failure other than I'm incapable, so they just lied about how well they did over 3 times more often. Okay, so let me talk about one more study, actually 2 more studies really quickly. So this will get to a little bit to your question. So one approach that researchers have taken to develop a growth mindset in students, when we want to develop a growth mindset in people, in ourselves or in students, or if I asked you right now, what is a growth mindset? And actually, let's do that. Let's have all of us define what a growth mindset means. Let's write it down if you have a piece of paper in front of you, or think about what is the definition. Let's take 20 seconds to define what is the growth mindset. We've been talking a lot about it, but what is it? So when you believe that your abilities can change, when you can, this exactly is correct. What you said is correct. When there's room for improvement in your abilities. Now, a lot of times when we ask this, and you might reflect on what you wrote down, people might say things like, when effort is a good thing, or when people are resilient, or a can-do attitude. A can-do attitude, or none of those things are a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the belief that abilities can change and improve. And the reason that that's important is that often we know that those things are important, they're necessary, like, for example, being resilient or sticking with it or believing that you can do it. Those are all important things. And when we see students or ourselves not doing those things, we try to change those things. Like, for example, if a student is not asking questions in class or doing their homework, often we say you have to do your homework, or you have to ask questions. And that's fine. It's not negative to say those things. But if you don't address the underlying belief, which is that abilities can change, then our direct attempt at trying to change the behaviors are ineffective. So here's a study that researchers designed to foster a growth mindset in students. One way that wouldn't work is to say, we have to work hard, we have to believe in ourselves, we have to be resilient, and kind of say that and pound that over and over again. That wouldn't be an effective way to address the belief of whether abilities can change or not. So instead, what these researchers did is they created a class, a workshop, where everybody studied the neuroscience of the brain, how the brain works, and the plasticity of the brain, the fact that the brain can become more capable when we use it and when we practice deliberately. So for example, they studied that research on London cab drivers have shown that if you look at their hippocampus is bigger and more dense and more active and more capable than that of other people, because they always have to be thinking about the street names and where the streets are. They have to get a sense and memorize a map of the city. And as a result of that, their brain physically changes and functionally changes. So that's showing, our ability to think can change. We can change our ability to think through our own thinking. Or another example might be when we study the brains of rats who are put into stimulating environment, like in cages that have toys and other rats and smells and different flavors. Their brains are a lot denser and more active than rats who are in boring environments where their brains aren't working very much. So they learn about the plasticity of the brain, the fact that we can change our own ability to think. And as a result of this, teachers identified the students who had learned these things were behaving in a lot more motivated ways in class. They were asking questions, they were doing their homework, they were working harder. And as a result of that harder work, they increased their math grades. Their math grades for everybody were going down. And the students who were randomly assigned to learn that intelligence could be developed increased their grades over time. So back to your question, in the other study, one reason why people chose to challenge themselves is because they got praise for working hard. In this study, they didn't get praise for working hard. They just learned that intelligence can change. And as a result of that, they became more motivated and they started achieving at higher levels. So it's, we have 8 more minutes, and I tend to think that if we just open it for discussion, that would be a good use of time, or do you really want to get into that other study about peace? What do you think?
I would think there might be some questions.
Yeah, so why don't we open it for discussion? Okay, thanks. Okay, great. All right, yeah.